Our interview today is with Jack Chilson. Jack was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin in February of 1947. He served in the United States Army, April of 1966 through April of 69. His highest rank attained was E5. This interview is conducted at Burleson, Texas on Friday, August the 27th, 2010. My name is Dale Dexheimer. I'm not related to Jack. Also in the room we have Milton Gibson, who is our videographer. This interview is conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress and also Operation Remember for the city of Burleson, Texas. And with that intro, Jack, we'll let you tell us your story about your time in the Army.
Okay. Well, I graduated in '65 from high school. Then I went to work for Peerless Chain Company in Winona, Minnesota for about a year. And then I got married in April, and April 2nd, and up in Winona, Minnesota. And first mail I got was my draft notice. So I went around and I ended up enlisting in the Army for 3 years. So I went on to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri for basic training. That was 8 weeks. So I go down there, and it was in latter part of April, I guess. Anyway, it was cold at night down there. And back then, they had in the barracks, they had these, they heated the barracks with coal. So they appointed firemen to keep the fires going all night. They had to stoke them with the coal. So I was one of those firemen. And each one of us had, I guess, 4 or 5 barracks to do, you know. I only caught it, I think, a couple times in 8 weeks, 2 or 3 times. But you had to be there, I think, 6 at night till 6 in the morning. So anyway, it's pretty hard to stay awake. About 5 in the morning, you'd be. Anyway, basic training was pretty good. I still remember my drill sergeant, Sergeant Clark. He was a staff sergeant. He was a pretty good guy. So he's probably gone by now. But anyway, I went through my 8 weeks and then got a 2-week leave after that. Went home, and my wife come down and got me, in fact, her and her girlfriend. Drove back home. Then I had to go to Fort Sam Houston for medical training for combat medic. So I went through that school. That was 8 weeks. Then they put me in operating room school for operating room technician. That was 8 weeks. So went through that. Then I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for OJT, working in operating rooms. So we went up there, and my wife was with me, so we rented this little apartment off post, because I was only I guess I was a PFC then. And it was really a double garage, and they changed it over to an apartment, little. And it was pretty neat, kind of one room, and then they had a separate room for the kitchen and bathroom, and the rest was one room, you know, the living room and bedroom together, kind of. Anyway, so went through that school, and they'd put it through different things. You'd be, like one day you'd be scrubbed in a couple times. I had to scrub in. You're standing right next to the doctor, handing him the instruments. You're sterile. And we got this one guy in at one time from Vietnam. He got hit by a mortar around above the knees, and it shattered the femur on I think it was the right leg. So anyway, they had to debride the wound and everything. They took the bandages off, and bandages are just green. They were just, and anyway, they were picking out the dead muscles. They were just black, putting them in specimen jars. So anyway, so they ended up with the one leg they could save, because it wasn't, I don't think it hit the bone, I guess. Saved his one leg, but the other leg, they ended up, about 3 or 4 days later, they had to bring him in again and amputate his leg. So that day, I was just transporting patients, but I peeked in I could hear the saw going in there and stuff, but I was glad I wasn't scrubbed in on that operation. But I saw hysterectomies and a lot of different operations. Because they'd have you, like one day you'd be just circulating, they call it. You're not a sterile member of the team. You, like if you need something out of the operating room, they go out and get it or whatever, you know. And, you know, one day you'd be putting up surgery sets or whatever. And there was quite a bit to it because you had to know anatomy, and there was about like 500 instruments you had to try to learn. I remember it was like 10 different needle holders alone, you know, to learn, and different sutures and all that stuff. And pretty hard to learn it in 8 weeks or 16 weeks. But so anyway, I went through that, and then I didn't get any orders for a long time. So they kept me, I was transporting patients and this and that. And everybody kept asking me when I was going to get orders. So finally, like 2 or 3 months went by. Finally, I get orders to go to Alaska. So then they sent me up to, I guess it was out of Fort Lewis there. Anyway, we got on, a bunch of us got on a Golden Nugget jet, flew up to Alaska. So we get up to Fort Richardson, which is by Anchorage. So I'm sitting around there waiting to get processed in, and then they finally come up and they says, no, you're not staying here, you're going to Fort Wainwright, which is by Fairbanks. So I got on some little plane and shuttled me off up there. So I'm sitting around there waiting. Finally they come up, you're not staying here either, you're going out to Fort Greeley, Alaska. It's a little post out in the woods. So it's like 100 miles from Fairbanks. So there I go on a little bus, get out there, and sometimes there's buffalo and everything roaming around outside of the front of the fort there. So anyway, I ended up finally got a position up there and took over this specialist Marpo's position. He went to Germany, I believe it was. So I had my own section up there. All we had was a dispensary. We didn't have a hospital. Main floor, we had the reception area where you walk in. And then they had the pharmacy there and a couple examining rooms and a supply room. And then you had to go upstairs for the rest of the dispensary. You go upstairs, and then there was a dental clinic, an x-ray, and then you go down the hall, and then there was the lab, and then my section, CMS, on the right. I can still remember all that. And you walk down, and we had a little 8-bed ward is all we had, because we didn't hardly ever have any patients up there. And had a nurse's station up there. And so I'd sterilize instruments every day and put up suture sets and this and that. And we had an operating room, but we didn't do any operations because we didn't have an anesthetist. But we did deliver a couple babies when there's an emergency. Otherwise, they'd air vacuum to Fort Wainwright. But there was, a couple times that we had to do emergency deliveries. So that was, so I was up there a little over 2 years. And then I drove, then my father-in-law came up. I had about 3 or 4 months left in the Army, and he came up and we went out hunting, and I shot a bull moose. That was pretty exciting. And I'd been to Anchorage a couple times. Didn't get to travel too much around there. But so then come time to get out of the Army, and I came down to Fort Lewis, drove down the Alcan Highway. That was pretty rough. I kind of tore up the car going down there because it was in the spring of the year. And processed out there, and then I came back home. It was 9 days on the road to get back to Wisconsin. But I was anxious to get home because I hadn't been home in about 2.5 years. See my mom and dad and everybody. So, and I lived on post there. When I first got up there to Alaska, I couldn't get on base live on base because of the rank. I had to be E5 or more. So we rented these little trailers, which is pretty rough living. didn't even have a car for a while, but we couldn't afford one. So I finally got up enough money to buy an old car, and then my wife was, she got to be head waitress at the Officers Club, so she made pretty good money there. And I remember I worked a couple nights a week washing dishes at the Officers Club. and so I don't know how it went. And then we finally made E5 and we got to move on post because I still had over another year to go up there. So that was a lot better, handier, because I think my quarters was only about, I think, a block or two from the dispensary. So it was a small post, but it was pretty neat. In the wintertime up there, it got 50, 60 below. It really, maybe it wasn't quite that cold, but it was awful cold. Because one morning I went to, that's when we lived off post yet. Had an old 57 Ford, and I went to start it, and it wouldn't do anything. So I checked the battery. It was froze solid. I took it out, and I threw it on the ground, and it broke in half, and it was solid ice in there. But you had to run circulating heaters in your engines to circulate the water. Otherwise, they'd freeze up solid. So in the wintertime, you only had about 3 hours of daylight. It was dark the rest of the time. Summertime is about the opposite. It was daylight almost all the time. And we had to put, I remember we put tinfoil on the windows, the bedroom window, so you'd sleep. Otherwise, it would be too late in there. So, all in all, it was a pretty good experience. And besides doing my operating room duties, I had did some X-ray. When the X-ray tech wasn't there, I'd fill in for him. And back then, you had to dip them in the solution to develop the film. And did that, and then I'd put on some casts once in a while and things like that. So, but anyway, April of '69, I got back out of the Army, so went back to normal living.
Questions for you, Jack. I ask this question because of the industry that I worked in, but Peerless Chain, you worked for Peerless Chain in...
At Winona, Minnesota.
What did Peerless Chain?
Oh, they make chain and wire forms. And they get stacks of wires in on these big stands from Germany and all over the country, all over the world. And they have machines they call a force slide, and it comes in from all four angles. It takes a piece of wire in, cuts it off, and these come in and form it, and they back off, and it drops it in a pan. And they made wire forms for Masonite and Erdl and Tonka for toys. They made axles and stuff like that for them. Okay. They had $1 million inventory for Masonite, things like that. Masonite, those pegboard fixtures.
Okay. So this was metal forming?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I worked there, well, when I first went out of the Army.
In the shop?
Yeah, in the plant, yeah. We had about 300 people, I think. They're still in business today. They're about the second or third largest in the world. They're doing real good up there. And I did different jobs, material handling and tumblers and this and that. And I was expecting to get on machines someday, be a machinist. And I come back from the Army, went back to work there right away. And then my foreman come up to me one day and he says, "Come on, I got a good job for you." So we go up to what am I trying to say? The office up there, production office. And he's going to be the expediter. I take the process sheets around and kind of work with engineering. And you go around, and my job was to keep every week there'd be 30 or 40 special make orders, special assemblies had to be made up. I had to sign acknowledgments, and I'd kind of go through the plant and push them through and make sure they hit due dates. And you kind of had to know the whole plant to have that job. And I knew the foreman and everything. And some of those foremen were my dad knew a lot of them. You know, my dad ran a tavern when I was a kid, and they'd come in, some of them come in my dad's tavern. So anyway, it was a good outfit. So
you enlisted in the Army.
Yeah.
Already had your draft notice?
Yes. And at that time, they had a deal. The Army did. If you enlist for 3 years, they guarantee you go to Alaska. Not saying how long or anything. So I went ahead and took that. And then he said he'd do what he could for me for schooling. So they put me in medical.
You went. You went on the program guaranteed to go to Alaska because
I really didn't care about going to Vietnam. I would have went if I'd have had to go, but
well, at least you didn't go to Canada. You know,
no,
up
I
there
wouldn't.
where you were
No.
wasn't too far to Canada. So
no, it wasn't.
But yeah, so you made a
Yeah.
conscious decision to do what
Yeah.
you felt better at. Okay. You were in the barracks. Oh, at Fort Leonard Wood.
Yeah.
The firemen. So you went around all night and stoked these fires.
Yeah.
Took the old coal scuttle and
Yeah.
threw it in the furnace.
Yeah.
So if you worked all night, did they give you off the next day?
Yeah, I believe they did. Yeah, I can't
Okay.
remember now, but I remember I got on KP duty one time. I think I was peeling potatoes, but I didn't do anything bad. I don't think it just happened to come up. But the basic training was fairly easy. I guess the Marines is a lot tougher.
Do you have any experience that would have made that basic easy? You ever done anything physical?
Oh, sure. I lifted weights through high school.
Did you?
I started lifting weights. I wanted to be a muscle man. I never cared about sports. It was funny. Basketball, football, any of that.
You were not one of those Wisconsin wrestlers?
No, I didn't even get into wrestling. But I was 13, I remember, and I wanted. So we went down to this sporting goods place, and I got a set of weights, barbells and dumbbells, and I made my own work bench out of 2x4s, so I could do bench presses and all that kind of stuff for my chest, and I built that thing, and I'd lift weights up in my room, and I'd do it Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. And by the time I was 18, boy, I weighed 150, and I could standing press 170 over my head, 3 repetitions, and I could bench press 200. So I was.
You're probably doing that to impress the girls.
Well, yeah, that was part of it. But I'd buy these strength and health magazines just, I want to look like that someday. And you build up pretty quick when you're that young. But if I'd have stayed with it, of course, when I graduated from high school, started working, and then you kind of just fall away from it. But then every once in a while, I'd get back in it a little, off and on.
You said your drill instructor, and I think this was at Leonard Wood. Your drill instructor, I believe his name was Clark?
Yeah, Sergeant Clark.
He was a good guy. Okay.
Yeah.
Why was he a good guy?
Oh, I don't know.
Just a fatherly
Of course,
kind of
I'd get
guy?
along with everybody pretty good anyway. But yeah, he just seemed like and he was the type, as long as you tried, and of course, I didn't have any trouble. I was in good physical shape compared to a lot of those guys. But he wouldn't try to hassle anybody as long as they did their job.
After Leonard Wood, you went to Fort Sam Houston.
Yeah.
Combat medic school, and then operating room tech, if I have this right.
Yes.
You lived in a barracks? You lived off
Yeah,
post?
in the barracks.
You're in the barracks. So your wife was in Wisconsin?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then when I went to Alaska, then she wanted to. Her mother had passed away when I went home on leave after basic training. She had leukemia. I never got to know her very long because we just started dating in I guess before Christmas, and then we got married April 2nd. We were only going together about 4 months. I was 19, she was 18. Anyway, we went home. I went home on leave, and we went to see her a couple times, and she was in the hospital. She was already getting pretty bad. I no more got back down to Fort Sam Houston for medical training, and they called me in the orderly room and says your mother-in-law passed away. So they gave me a week's emergency leave to go home for the funeral. I remember there was a Lieutenant Colonel Prince. I didn't have any money, you know. I needed some money to do that. So this Lieutenant Colonel Prince loaned me, I don't know what it was, $400 or $500 or something like that.
Out of his own pocket?
I believe I think he did. And then I paid him back when I came. But that was pretty nice of him to do that.
Your time at Fort Sam on this schooling that you went through, what were some of the subjects that you went through? I guess you went to school 8 until 5 every day?
Yeah, it was about that, yeah. And the combat medic was just bandaging and things like that, you know, basic stuff. And I remember some days we'd just work outside, you know, putting bandages on, this and that. And then the combat medic the operating room school was more books, and because you had to try to learn all these instruments and the anatomy and different layers of skin. And there was quite a bit to that, you know.
You ever use any of that schooling as a combat medic? You ever work in the field outside?
No.
No.
No, I really didn't care for the medical field. I mean, when I got out in civilian life, I went, like I said, I went back to Peerless Chain Company. And then we moved down to San Antonio here in '72. And I went to work for this Packmore Manufacturing. They made bodies for garbage trucks, believe it or not. So they put me in the production office because I told them I had that experience. So I was working with bills and materials and all that stuff. And it didn't pay anything, though. I think I was making like $1. No, I think it was $1.90 an hour. And,
do you remember how much you made when you were, say, at Fort Sam Houston? After you got out of basic?
Basic? No, I don't remember. I remember they paid us, I think, once a month, cash money they'd pay you. But I think it was only like $110 or $80 or $90 a month or something. It wasn't much.
You get anything extra when you went to Alaska? They pay you anything extra for being there?
No, but I think we got money for living off post. They gave you cost of living, I think, allowance for that. But I remember it was $125. We got up there. She came up pregnant, and then we had to get a place to live. And we go out looking at these old trailers. They really weren't meant for that kind of cold weather, you know. And it was $125 a month, I remember, for this trailer. And we had some problems with it. It had heated with fuel oil. And one night it started on fire. And we had to get out. And I was afraid the place was going to burn down. And my daughter was like a month or two old is all she was. And then that guy was kind of lousy to us that we were renting from. He was kind of goofy anyway. He had believe it or not, he had a bulldozer like, and he'd get out there late at night and start bulldozing ground around back there. You know, and you're trying to sleep. And he wouldn't do it in the daytime. He was nuts. Anyway, so we decided we had to move after that trailer. We had that trouble. So we moved to a smaller trailer, but everything worked in it. And this old couple had this little trailer park. And we lived there about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, I guess, maybe 5 months. And then I finally got everything come together. Then I'm 85, and she got to be head waitress so we started making better money. And so then we got to move on post, and things were a lot better.
Let me go back to Fort Sam. You lived in a barracks.
Yeah.
Ate in a mess hall?
Yeah.
Pretty good
I remember
job.
in the mornings, mornings we had SOS. I really liked that.
And Army SOS is?
It's just hamburger meat and gravy and on toast. You know, but I always liked that anyway. And it was.
Had off weekends? What'd you do on your weekends?
Yeah, I think I was off in AIT. I think we were off on the weekend. Oh, they had a theater there at Fort Sam. It's still there. I'd go to the theater and stuff like that.
Okay.
But, or kind of bum around San Antonio, you know, sightsee.
Have a car?
Yeah, I bought an old, I can't remember. Oh, I bought an old Cadillac in San Antonio, 57 Fleetwood. And it was a four-door hardtop, black, beautiful. And it was low, it had like 50-some thousand original miles. And then we,
And you're what, an E4?
Yeah, I wasn't even E4.
E3.
E3, I think. And but anyway, got up to Oklahoma with it, and somebody ran a stop sign and hit me broadside and totaled it out. So we didn't get another car there. And then I had to, it wasn't too long after that, then I had to go to Alaska, so. But yeah, money was really a problem when we got up to Alaska, because she had the baby, and then and then this, I remember my father-in-law sent this TV up to us, black and white TV, and don't you know it didn't want to work. So there was a TV place down the road 2 or 3 miles. We're walking down the side of the road with that TV, and she's pregnant. I thought it was the end of the world, you know. I says, boy. And the TV didn't have, the on and off switch didn't work. You want it on, you plug it in, and you want it off, you unplug it. In rabbit ears, you know, for reception.
You had all this military training and all this experience in the medical field, and yet when you got out, you never used any of that.
No.
Just didn't have any desire.
No, I didn't care to be around sick people or that kind of thing, really.
Your time in the military influenced that, Jack? Did you see enough in the military you just didn't want to go back to it?
Yeah, I saw some operations, and I just didn't. And then Peerless Chain was such good. They had real good benefits, and they had a profit sharing plan and all that. So that's why I went. You know, there was no question about it. I figured I'd go back there and put my 20 years in or whatever, you know, and because there was guys there that they'd been there like 30 years already, and they had $400,000 or $500,000 in their retirement waiting for them, you know. So, and they were just production work. You know, they were they had end welders that would weld the links and things like that. And there was a lot of aspects to making chain. It's got to be calibrated, and you know, they got calibration machines. Each link has to have certain inside length and all that.
Tolerances.
Yeah, and they had a high test chain, and they made sling chains, like for overhead lifting. Mm-hmm. Those had serial numbers, because if that, you know, that chain broke and kills.
Liability.
Yeah, so they those had really be special made and all that, heat treated. And
it took you a long time to get orders to Alaska.
Yeah.
You
it did.
Sat around for several months, and they had to deliver
2 or 2.5 months, I think, a long time.
And yet, when you enlisted on a program that guaranteed you were going to Alaska.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Does that seem a little out of whack there? That they knew you were going to Alaska?
Yeah.
It took all that long.
Yeah,
to
but
get
nobody
orders?
could understand, because everybody, even some of the doctors were asking me, because I was around there forever. You know, he says, "When are you going to get orders?" I don't know. So they'd have me transporting patients, or I'd be, you know, putting up surgical sets or whatever, you know.
When you got to Alaska, and you've touched on this a little bit.
I had almost a year in the service time I got up there
to
Alaska.
The winters. Now you said it got to 40, 50 below?
Yeah, somewhere around there, yeah, 40, 50 below.
You have block heaters on the cars?
Yeah, we had circulating heaters.
Okay.
They put them in, and it circulates the water through the block and everything. And they had plug-ins everywhere, like for your. You see on those pictures, you see those.
Didn't protect the battery though.
No, they had battery blankets too. They didn't really work too good. They would put around your battery. I didn't think they really. But your battery was usually do okay, as long as you had enough acid in there.
Okay.
But yeah, it got awful cold up there.
Did it snow a lot, Jack?
Pretty good amount of snow.
You at least had some experience. You came out of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I was used to the winter, so winters really didn't And the winter time up there in Alaska was really dreary. Every day, besides only about 3 hours of daylight, it was always usually real dismal, like a ice fog, and kind of cloudy. Just depressing like. And then you get around to summertime, and it was around 60 degrees, and light almost all the time. Beautiful in the summer, really nice.
Did the Army have activities maybe to counteract some of that?
They had a gym and stuff like that.
Yeah,
not a whole lot.
Intramural basketball, or do a lot of bowling?
No, I didn't do any up there. I don't know if we had a bowling center or not, but
I just wondered what you did in those dreary conditions. It must have, you had something to do, or else
yeah,
drive you a little wacky.
yeah, yeah. It got pretty dreary in the winter up there.
In your clinic, you mentioned you had a pharmacy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Could you write a prescription?
Oh no.
No.
They had these pharmacists. They had. They were just they were pharmacists in real life. I mean, in civilian life, they and then they, of course, they'd make them a pharmacist.
So
and
were they officers?
No,
then?
they weren't officers.
They were
just enlisted. Yeah.
Okay.
Unless I guess like if you were a doctor of pharmacy, then I guess you'd be an officer. They're on somebody that they can actually make pills and this that. But the officers, I know they like doctors would go in, they'd automatically be made a captain right away, at rank.
You mentioned you had, I think, a smaller ward. You could accommodate 8 or 10 patients, but never, or not never. You didn't have patients all the time.
Usually we didn't very often have a patient up there.
When you had
very
patients,
seldom. One or two, maybe.
For pneumonia or?
Not pneumonia. I don't remember what it was. We only had a couple up there. It's pretty much just a waste of space, kind of. But I remember one time we had. When we had, I forgot to mention about. They had CQ at night. CQ and ACQ had to stay there from like 6 at night till 6 in the morning, in case of emergencies, and of course somebody would always come in late at night. And anyway,
stitches or?
Yeah, sometimes they'd come in with a cut or whatever, and we just had couches in there, and we wore our white smocks and white pants. We just take our smock off and sleep in our T-shirt and pants, and have a sheet to cover up with and a pillow. And you just start going to sleep good, and somebody would come in. And I remember one night we had to take this, he was an Eskimo, he was an Indian native person from up there, and he was wacky. I don't know what it was, psychologically nuts or... Anyway, we had to take him to Fort Wainwright in the ambulance. So that was quite a deal. Me and this Joseph Haas, I remember that was his name.
You have to restrain him?
I can't remember if we did or not. He was kind of crazy. But it took us a while to get him up there because I think it was like 100 miles to Fort Wainwright. You
went out and you shot a bull moose, or you did or your father-in-law did?
We kind of both did. I took the first shot. He come up. He brought the rifle. I didn't have a rifle. He brought a rifle with him, a .308 Magnum, I think it was, with a Weaver scope on it. And we were driving. We were going after caribou, really, because see, I was up there over a year, so I was considered a resident. So for $7, I got a moose tag, a Dall sheep tag, and 3 caribou tags. I'll take all that for $7. Of course, this is back in '67, or I guess '68, So anyway, we're out after caribou, so we were driving in off the road, and I didn't get 2 miles in off the road, and here's this moose standing up there, just like a picture, He says, "Stop the car." So we get out, and he loads that gun. And why? And my father-in-law was one of these guys that thinks he knows everything, and he screw everything up, Big old guy. And a nice guy, but we had a lot of fun together. But anyway, for some reason, he only had 3 shells with him. But he had his bow and arrow with him, luckily. And he had, you know, like a 120-pound bow, because he had big shoulders. He was a tough, big guy. So anyway, and he told me, he says, we only got 3 shells. So I shoot at him, and I hit him in the butt, I guess. And he ran down off, and there's a swamp down here, a pothole, you know. So he gets in that water to cool him off. So he's standing in that water, and I was pretty nervous. So he says, you want me to shoot? I says, yeah. So he shoots once, and the moose took off out of the water, and when he got up out of the water, he shot again, and he hit him in the back. And it broke his back, I guess, because that moose went down, and he was clawing the ground. We ran over there. And boy, he was, you know, they'll charge you if you wound a moose. They'll kill you. But anyway, so he says, well, I'll finish him off. Well, we didn't have any shells left. So he pulls out one of those big old hunting arrows. He shoots him in the side of the head, and the hunting arrow went in probably that far. Didn't even phase that moose. They're pretty tough. So he shot again. They shot him down the throat, and he started pumping that blood out. And then he kept pawing that ground till he pumped it, and he finally died. But
with all this medical training that you had, okay, you and your father-in-law are there, you got this dead moose on the ground. Do you dress him out?
I went back to get some help with a pickup truck so we could haul. So he stayed there, and he did the gutting them out.
You did field dress them there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All we took was a 4/4. So I came back. I got a couple of guys from the post. And this one guy had a Dodge pickup, and he was one of these guys. He thought he had the toughest truck in the world. And it wasn't even a 4-wheel drive. And I told him, I said, don't get off the road. You're going to get stuck. He runs out there and he gets that thing stuck and down to the axles, you know. So we had to get a wrecker out there to you know, I had to pay for that because I guess it was my deal, you know. Anyway, we took the 4 quarters and each quarter, it took 2 guys on a quarter. I guess each quarter weighed 200 pounds. And he was just a medium, you know. He wasn't a huge. He was pretty big. He had a rack about this big, I guess.
All that medical training, and your father-in-law's the one that cleaned the moose.
Yeah.
Okay. Came back down the Alcan Highway. Was it paved?
No, I believe most of it was just gravel.
How long did that take you?
A couple of days, because we stayed at some place. We got about halfway down, I guess, and we stayed there overnight. And it was an old motel, you know, and they had a little cafe. I remember the next morning we went in there and ate breakfast and everything. And but it was pretty rough. And at one time I came around around this corner. It was in the spring of the year, and there was a lot of snow and everything. And it was a frost heave in the road, and I couldn't avoid it. So it hit pretty hard, and I figured it hit that oil pan. And pretty soon that oil light came on, and I shut that engine off, because that Ford had a 390 in it, pretty big motor. So, and this guy, just by luck, and we were out there kind of in the middle of nowhere in Canada there, this guy come along with a little old homemade wrecker. And he towed us over to his shop, and he got under there and welded that oil pan up. So then we got back on the road and trying to get down there to Spokane or Fort Lewis. And I could feel this vibration, you know, bad. Well, it bent the drive shaft too. So anyway, so I wanted a new car anyway. We'd saved up there in the Army. So we get to Spokane, and I got out of the Army, and then we found this Pontiac place, so I bought a new Firebird. So just a 3-speed with a 350, $3,300, brand new. So I traded that Ford in on it. And boy, it was a...
One last question. You ever been back to Alaska?
No, never have.
Have no desire?
Well, my girlfriend wants to go on a cruise up there, Alaskan cruise, but maybe next year we'll do that or something. But she wants to go to Hawaii bad too. So.
Well, that's a little divergence, isn't it? A little.
Mm-hmm.
Jack, we appreciate you coming by this morning and taking your time, sir, to do this interview.
Okay.
Appreciate your time in the service.
Sure.
Good to meet you.
Thank you.